G'day, mate. Luke Ford here, and I want to talk about one of my favorite movies, the 1992 Australian film, The Nostradamus Kid. It was directed by Bob Ellis, and you can watch it for free on YouTube. It reminds me so much of my own Seventh-day Adventist upbringing, the world that my father lived in, and just about coming of age. And it's available for free on YouTube. And it's such a poor quality copy on YouTube. It's very much like watching my past, right? When you watch your past, you don't expect it to be in 4D color, right? But this is coming through very much in kind of that fuzzy video from the past. So I'm going to play some excerpts of this movie and discuss it, directed by an Australian, Bob Ellis, who died in 2016. And I've talked to some of the people that were in this movie was based on, such as Penelope Nelson, formerly known as Penny McNichol. So Penelope Nelson is an Australian author, and she and Ian Masters, who is a commentator on KPFK, took the road trip that is the highlight of this movie. But anyway, let's play a little bit from the beginning of The Nostradamus Kid.
The last time I gave my heart to the Lord was in 1959. I was 16 then. I guess I was in the habit. All in all, I gave my heart to the Lord 8 times. 8 and a half if you count the time I tripped over a cocker spaniel and had to be carried from the church with a broken ankle. Then I lost my virginity and I got more cagey about where I put my heart and how often. It wasn't right then, actually. It was 3 years later when I was 19 and 1 month old, which was the national average then. It was a long time ago.
Okay, so the movie keeps going back and forth between 1956, when he spends 10 days at a Seventh-day Adventist summer camp. Seventh-day Adventist is really big into summer camps and camping, getting away from the wicked and evil city, and going to camp and having revival meetings. So here's the description on YouTube. Kenneth Elkins is a randy young man who is told that the world is about to end. That's a major theme in Seventh-day Adventism. In a race against time, there's only one goal he wants to accomplish: betting the love of his life, who just happens to be the local pastor's daughter. So this is an autobiographical movie by Bob Ellis. If you don't know who Bob Ellis is, well, I put the Wikipedia description of his life in the video description. Robert James Ellis, born 10th of May 1942, died April 3rd, 2016, was an Australian writer, journalist, filmmaker, and political commentator. He was a student at the University of Sydney at the same time as other notable Australians, including Clive James, Jermaine Greer, Les Murray, John Bell, Ken Haller, Robert Hughes, and Mungo McCullum. He was raised a Seventh-day Adventist in Lismore, New South Wales, Australia. It says the seminal moment of his life happened when he was 10 years of age and his 22-year-old sister was killed while crossing the road. So he attended Lismore High School, then the University of Sydney on a Sir Robert Menzies scholarship. Sir Robert Menzies is the longest serving Australian Prime Minister, 4 times, served about 20 years. And Bob Ellis, big supporter of the Australian Labor Party, wrote a lot of speeches for Labor politicians. So a key part of this movie is a road trip taken in 1962, when there's all sorts of concerns about the world coming to an end because of the Cuba embargo, and it looked like the United States is going to clash with the Soviet Union, and that would turn into like a major nuclear conflagration. So the road trip, there were two other peoples on the road trip with Bob Ellis. There was Penelope Nelson, better known as Penny McNichol. That's the name she had growing up. She was the daughter of David McNichol, the then editor-in-chief of the Frank Packer-owned Sydney Daily Telegraph. So, fearing nuclear annihilation, Bob Ellis, a catastrophist, fled with Penelope and Ian Masters, the KPFK radio host. And they fled for the Blue Mountains outside of Sydney, and expecting the war to come to an end. So they traveled, Penelope recalls, in her own father's stolen car, and I found to my amazement the world hadn't ended. There wasn't a mushroom cloud over Sydney, and I had to bring her back and face down David. Oh, this is Bob Ellis's words. I had this plan that we would marry in Broken Hill, Australia, and slowly cough ourselves to death with the nuclear radiation after long hours of making love. So I emailed Ian Masters, and he said he'd never seen the film. So he did have lunch with Bob Ellis in Australia in December of 2012. Then Penelope Nelson tells me, I drove. It was my mother's car. Ian Masters was with us. Bob was thin in those days. What more can I say? Okay, so I want to play this little bit where he talks about
thanks a whole lot.
Losing his virginity.
Did I say something?
So the protagonist in this movie is always shagging women. And it's kind of amazing. How did Bob Ellis have so much success with women, given that it's not exactly a great looking dude and kind of a selfish person, a narcissist, much like myself. So he grew up Seventh-day Adventist, so he didn't drink and didn't smoke and didn't lend his bum to other blokes. But couldn't stay Adventist because he liked shagging the Sheilas a little too much.
It's really nice.
You were disappointed, weren't you?
Well, it was like getting baptized. I mean, you're totally immersed and you come up spitting water expecting the Holy Spirit to land on your head and choirs of angels exalting, and then there's this dead still silence and nothing's happened. Everything's just as it was, except she's soaking wet.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much.
Well, what's wrong with you?
Thanks a whole lot.
Did I say something wrong? Have I offended you in some way?
Oh, please, don't see me home. Dad will kill you. He's got this 12-bore shotgun and all these unresolved incestuous feelings towards me.
Oh, well, maybe we should get engaged then.
Engaged?
Yes.
That's not what I had in mind. Faramara, please, driver.
Oh, and our young hero, he's lost his virginity, but his heart's kind of broken. God, I love this movie. Just keep watching it and watching it. So let me talk a little bit about, there are two other main characters in this movie. There is the woman played by Miranda Otto that's based on Penelope Nelson or Penny McNichol. And she's the main female character in the movie. So Miranda Otto is in the Lord of the Rings films. And then there are two blokes. There's McAllister, his best mate at Sydney University. and Wayland, his best mate at the Seventh-day Adventist campground. So the movie keeps switching between 1956 and 1962. So 56 is when he's presumably about 16 years of age at the 15 at the Seventh-day Adventist campground, and then 22 when he's a journalist at the Sydney University newspaper.
I like you. But if anything's going to happen, it's got to be my own decision in my own time.
Yeah, but I'm very impatient. I mean, the end of the world is nigh, extremely nigh. There are signs and portents.
No, I'll drive you home.
There are signs and portents. I love it. Oh, come on. That's a great line for a guy trying to seduce a young woman, saying there, signs and portents. So Miranda Otto plays Jenny O'Brien. And that's based on Penelope Nelson, or really Penny McNichol, daughter of David McNichol, editor-in-chief of the Sydney Daily Telegraph. So here's some notes on this movie. So the Nostradamus Kid opened to mixed reviews, some appreciating the film's idiosyncratic, eccentric tone, befitting a pre-epic Seventh-day Adventist fearing the apocalypse, and others finding it a tedious bore with more than dubiously suspect sexual politics. Oh, I love it. She says to the protagonist, "You're a very interesting person." A number of times women have said that to me. You're a very interesting person. So Lyndon Barber in the Sydney Morning Herald was in the positive camp. So Noah Taylor plays the young Ellis's alter ego, Danny Elkin. Okay, here he comes back. He's a cat burglar.
She's terrific, this one. Even richer than the other.
You have my warmest congratulations.
Yeah. You don't think I might have sexed Steve McAllister?
Yes, now go to sleep.
You could be right. Perhaps I always was.
Then we go to 1956 at the Seventh-day Adventist campground. That's where he falls in love with the pastor's daughter.
My sister's father's pastor, obviously. Meg's the younger one.
Why? She's little. Where's the other one? She's tall.
Yeah,
Is that what I prefer?
their complexions.
You're English. Secrets to do.
English girls have those beautiful complexions, look.
Yeah. I've got skin like that all over.
Come on, man.
What's that?
To marry him to find out.
You're right, too. I wouldn't mind it. Dennis girls get married at 16. But I want to see the world first. Go to Brisbane, Cairns.
See the world first. Go to Brisbane and Cairns.
Oh, only my cousin Thelma down in the greenhouse. We got caught. Did you bang up against her teeth? No, I did. Must be deformed. Why, who'd you kiss? Cousin Thelma. Down in the greenhouse. Same day.
And old brethren, time is short. The good book says, ye know not the day nor the hour. Just as was prophesied, knowledge shall be increased, men run to and fro. Television, jet air travel, the atomic bomb. Why? There is even a move to open the pubs till 10 o'clock at night.
Hey!
The signs of the times, sister, the signs of the times. And heresy, why heresy is everywhere. The Jehovah's Witnesses have doubled their numbers in New South Wales in only 3 years.
They breed like rabbits.
That's right, Brother Allison. But heresy breeds faster than rabbits. And Alwyn Hutef, the shepherd's rod, once an honored member of our own church in Coffs Harbour, now a lost soul, doomed by God's judgment to thrash and writhe and scream forever in the great lake of fire. Wickedness abounds, and the time of God's coming is near.
This is so much like my Seventh-day Adventist upbringing. I'm like seeing the poor quality. It's like looking into my own past. How many camp meetings have I been to just like this?
Hi. Ken Elkin from Lismore.
Hello. I'm Esther Anderson. This is my sister Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. This is Waylon Gibson.
Sarai. You spell it with an Sarai.
Come again? It's a lovely name. You reckon?
Thank you.
We're from Lismore.
Yes, you said.
I'm deputy youth leader there.
Oh, really?
We just wanted to tell you how much we enjoyed your father's sermon and appreciated it.
You were giggling all the way through.
Not through the good bits.
And which were they?
The one about the rabbits?
Yes.
You're from England, are you?
Yes. We came out 4 years ago. On the Orchidees.
Warm enough for you over here?
Yes.
Good.
Well, we'd better be going to bed. Good night. Good night.
No, no.
Oh, I love the music. This music. So much like my Seventh-day Adventist upbringing. Now he goes home to write in his journal.
What are you doing up this late? Don't you know what time it is?
I'm writing a letter to a girl.
You're too young to be writing letters to girls. Put the light out, you'll burn us down.
That's just what my parents would say. You're too young to be writing letters to girls.
Pictures. I'll give up comics for 6 months if you make a sit with me at the pictures. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not love and am become as a sounding brass or a tinkling. I guess you know the rest. I'm signing off now. Bless Mum and Dad and Gran, Auntie Ed and Uncle Claude and Barry and Waylon Gibson. Kid McAllister. Bring him to your truth. He's a good soul, really, and a great spin bowler. For Jesus' sake.
Great spin ball, a bit of cricket there. He gives her a note that he's written, a letter. I was at Sabbath school. This is my upbringing, mate. She's reading his letter. She's all fascinated. Finds him interesting.
Will you say amen for me? All right. Any questions?
Sit down.
In Matthew 24:34, it says, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." And he's prophesying the 10 last plagues in the end of the world.
Yes, brother, what's your question?
Well, that generation has all passed. They're all dead, aren't they? I mean, a whole bang lot of them, so...
Are you implying, brother, our Lord was mistaken?
No, I just mean that if all the Bible's true, and we believe that, and this is not true, well, it means the whole thing's a...
Go on, brother. Speak out the sin in your heart.
No, it's just a question, and I think there should be an answer, shouldn't there?
How do you know, brother? There may not still be a 2,000-year-old man in the jungles of Sumatra living today. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, well, there could be.
And if only one such man has survived, that generation has not passed.
I think that's good enough.
He doesn't think that's good enough. Is it good enough for you? Yes! then it's good enough for me. Will you say amen for me?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that I dealt with in my upbringing.
Next question.
Religious leaders don't appreciate these kind of questions in general. I'd ask all sorts of pertinent questions growing up, and people didn't like it. Okay, now he's got the pastor's daughter in his sights.
Nobody's ever said those things to me before. Ever.
Right.
It's a beautiful letter,
Thank you.
but I don't feel the same about you. And I don't think I ever could.
Why not?
I don't like the look of you. And I don't think you're a true Adventist. You harbour doubts.
I could learn to overcome them.
Would you really?
If you could find it in your heart to help me.
No. It's your struggle. You must ask God for help. Thank you for the letter, but I don't think I should keep it.
Well, will you sit with me on the pictures on Saturday?
No, I'm sitting with my father. I think you should sit with yours.
He's not coming.
Why not?
He's an atheist.
Not surprised.
He's a commercial traveller. He sells pick-me-up, saw some billy tea. He drinks like a fish. It's quite a struggle. What'd you do?
Ah, great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Okay, here's the film review. Noah Taylor plays the young Ellis's alter ego, Danny Elkin. Filmmaker here lays bare his youthful agonies and indiscretions. As a Seventh-day Adventist, mostly lapsed. Oh, this is where the bikers come by, try to...
I pondered the question of women. My dad reckoned they were all bloodsuckers, and you saw them standing outside the church at every wedding, rubbing their hands and snickering, "Here comes another poor mug into our clutches." But they certainly had their attractions.
Carol, come back! It won't be long.
That bad girl Meryl runs off with the bikers. Bikers are sinners. And then here comes the shepherd's rod. So that's a heretic. He's preaching heresy.
Seem all right. Look, he's only
The
got one
time
hand.
of the end is nigh.
He said the Adventists cut it off and fed it to the dogs. Cripes. Did they? I don't know. They might have. Pretty funny mob down Coffs Harbour way.
All my childhood, all these nutters were coming over wanting to talk to my father about the end of the world, the apocalypse, eschatology. So Meryl comes back from the bikers, gets beaten up by her mum for being a sinner. Okay, back to the review.
Gonna call it 10 days. Just the camp last that long. Yeah. Well, there's 2 million Adventists. They might read it.
They put it on the index.
Why? What we put in it?
Sex, violence, blasphemy. Novel reading's a sin anyway.
Is it?
According to Mrs. White, our founding prophetess.
Does that include Biggles?
I reckon. Of course it does.
No.
Okay, the filmmaker here, Bob Ellis, lays bare his youthful agonies and indiscretions as a Seventh-day Adventist, mostly lapsed, running through the 1950s and 60s on a full tank of hormones, obsessed by the end of the world. A series of disheveled sexual adventures as a Sydney University undergraduate is interrupted with flashbacks to Adventist bush camps, where the younger Elkin's longings for a preacher's virginal daughter, played by Alice Garner, are disappointed in scenes of some hilarity. Oh yeah, musical knees. So you're not allowed to dance in the Seventh-day Adventist church. So they play this game called musical knees. It's kind of like that game where like they play music and then you have to find a chair. And if you don't find a chair, then you're out. Okay, what distinguishes the film, aside from Noah Taylor's splendid performance and Ellis's witty dour dialogue is a willingness to show his protagonists uglier follies unflinchingly. So virginity is lost in a pallid thrash on the floor. A protracted affair with a middle-class student played by Miranda Otto. She's the daughter of the Sydney Telegraph editor, leads after venereal panics to court restraint orders. Yet the moments of tenderness work just as well. The intimate aftermath of sex is vividly conveyed. Ellis makes being a lapsed Adventist look akin to being a lapsed Catholic, only several times more extreme, which is perhaps why, for all its laconic Australianness, the Nostradamus Kid seems haunted by some distinctly Irish literary goats. Its scoundrel of a hero and scenes of student dereliction remind me of J.P. Donleavy's The Ginger Man, while its doomsayers seem like daggy Australian equivalents of James Joyce's Fire and Brimstone Preacher in Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Particularly good is the Cuban Missile Crisis sequence where Ken Elkin grabs Miranda Otto and drives west to escape. It successfully captures the very ungraspability of the idea of a nuclear Armageddon. Elkin was perhaps the only sane man in Sydney, yet his actions seem like those of a madman. Bob Ellis has long been one of Australia's most talented screenwriters, with Newsfront and Man of Flowers among his credits. The Nostradamus Kids show he's also a capable director. The arbiters of political correctness will, I'm sure, growl at the film's depiction of sexist behavior, confusing it with celebration of the same. But what I like about Ellis's writings is that he writes as if he doesn't care a fig for what anyone else thinks or even does. This willingness to offend should not be confused with a determination to do so. The Nostradamus Kid, this is from a review in the Melbourne Age, is Kenneth Elkin, who fails to grow up between the 1950s and 60s. Film was billed as a semi-autobiographical, swings between his adolescent experiences at a Seventh-day Adventist camp and some of his years as a student at Sydney University. Whether he's going through a phase of being a fundamentalist believer or a doubter or an atheist, he's permanently gripped by fear of the end. Okay, so this preacher here, I think Dibby, is based on a real character who was, my father had very warm relations with. He was the head of the Australasian division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church during the 1950s and 60s. And he's the one Seventh-day Adventist minister who's portrayed positively in this film.
Something flew off, and a bystander said, "Was that Dibley?" And the owner said, "No, that was his brand. He bucked off his brand, but Dibley was still there." Good on you, Dib. Thank you, brother. And we must hold on to the faith as surely as I held on for those 4 terrible days. For, brethren, the great tempter is ever at the door. Hutef, the shepherd's rod himself, encamped in his infamous caravan. Yea, verily, in the vacant lot across the road, a mere 100 yards from where I stand, and the Lord presides. But, brethren and sisters, the Lord enjoins us against all violence. Yea, even unto Hutef must we turn the other cheek. Show courtesy and civility, but never let his evil doctrine into our hearts.
Oh, this is great. This bit. Gotta listen to this bit.
Brother Elkin, I understand that you have been writing letters to my daughter Esther.
Yes, sir.
Well, what have you got to say for yourself?
Won't happen again, sir. She thinks they're funny anyway.
Yes, I did much the same when I was young, but not as young as you.
How'd you make out, sir?
Very well, I suppose. I married the girl. I've heard about you, young Elkin, your colourful young people's meetings, your questions from the floor, your doubts about the Trinity.
Well, Jacob wrestled with the angel too, sir. He turned out all right. Father of the chosen people.
You can write letters to my daughter if you want to, but I would prefer it if you did not deliver them in person.
Yes, sir.
Or perhaps it would be better if you read them to the whole family.
Yes, sir. If you wish. Write a very good letter.
Just imagine writing letters to this girl you love, and then her father comes along and say, perhaps it would be better if you addressed the letters to the whole family.
Can't go to the pictures, can't gamble, can't eat prawns, can't tell a joke unless it has a moral purpose. It's not good enough. Fucking Dad was right. I see a day when young people of all persuasions can go to the Saturday dance. I see a day when a godly person, if he wants to, can eat a licorice strap or a Freddo frog and not feel guilty.
Okay, bad Meryl is out with the bikers again, so she comes back late. And our protagonist runs into her.
Where have you been?
Don't say a word.
No. Wait, what was it like?
I don't know.
Did it feel sinful?
No, why should it?
Well, it has to.
Look, I don't know how it felt. It just felt different.
Describe it to me.
Oh, God, jump.
No, wait, I'm just curious.
Kel, can you wouldn't know if it was raining?
Oh, yes, I would.
You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just see through everything.
I mean, I'm pretty perceptive.
Look, and you haven't thought that all this might be a mistake. We've been putting off all the good things we could have been doing before we died just because this stupid old bitch got hit on the head and started having visions.
Yeah, well, I've thought about it.
Oh, no, you haven't.
Yes, I have.
Look, you try the shepherds, Ron. I have. You try the Catholics. All of it sounds okay while you're there. It all makes sense. But they all sound like they're making sense. They might all be wrong. All of them.
You tried the shepherd's rod.
Yes.
What did he sound like?
Very convincing.
Can I have a kiss?
No?
That's right. Like every religion makes sense when you're in it, right? When you're inside of it, looking out, it makes sense. Those are some great lines. Okay, back to the Melbourne Age Review, which is not.
Mind your mouth, young man, or I'll wash it out with soap.
Yeah, bugger it is a big sin, and damn and bloody and all that. Big sins in my Seventh-day Adventist upbringing. So our protagonist is Randy most of the time. This leads to much climbing in and out of windows. God, this score is gorgeous. I love the music. Kenneth Elkin seems not to understand any distinction between courtship and rape. To criticize him for this deficiency is not to apply New Age standards to masculine behavior 30 years ago. It is merely to make the point that Kenneth is, by any reasonable standards, a nasty little piece of work. And then here's a positive review from the Weekend Australian. In the world of solipsistic naval scrutiny, Bob Ellis, the director and writer of this film, is in the same league as Woody Allen. For Ken Elkin, the lead, the libidinous Lismore lad and adolescent hero, the Nostradamus Kid, we can, of course, substitute Ellis. Indeed, one wonders why a fictitious name was needed when the unmistakable Ellis tones in the voiceovers are there to remind us of the author. Bob Ellis does just an amazing voiceover in this movie. Ellis shares many of the hang-ups and obsessions of the protagonist, Kenneth Elkins. There's nothing more disconcerting to a critic than to discover an exact emotional and existential affinity with the person whose work he is reviewing. Wow. Yeah. The seductive pleasure of self-recognition is so flattering and nostalgically pervasive that it can conquer all critical reservations.
My fellow directors, we decided almost unanimously that the word "bull dust" would be acceptable.
History will judge you harshly, Kavanagh.
I've stiffened myself against that eventuality. It's a hard world we live in, young Elkin, but it's the only one there is.
The despairing ruminations of adolescence have a universal currency, and most of us, males at any rate, will recognize something of ourselves in these musings. Played with the indispensable, irreplaceable rightness of Noah Taylor, Kenneth Elkin moves erratically through Sydney University, where he meets his beloved Jenny, played by Miranda Otto, while featured editor of the Sydney University student newspaper, breaking it off for various amorous and spiritual encounters at Seventh-day Adventist camps. Drunken escapades with his soulmate McAllister, shoplifter and poet, and spin bowler, leads to encounters with the police, court appearances, and a brief dalliance with Billy Graham before Elkin finally flees to the Blue Mountains to escape the threat of nuclear annihilation during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Elkin's mentors include all manner of eccentrics, a robust Adventist pastor with philosophical leanings, an engaging religious crackpot who apparently went on to blow his brains out, but the result of Elkin's desertion from the faith is not clear, and a black radio guru from Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea.
Extremely nice. I've decided.
Well, we'd better secure some accommodation.
The end of the world is at nigh, so we better secure some accommodation. Film is too long. It's wholly and unashamedly self-indulgent, but that is the charm of it. Occasionally, the blend of literal truth and dreamy abstraction is a little uneasy, but Ellis's touch rarely fails. He made a funny, wise, and beautiful film. Yeah, I wish I could see the director's cut. So the cut that he turned in is exactly 2 hours. Another review from David Stratton, probably Australia's best-known movie critic. In his long-awaited autobiographical feature, The Nostradamus Kid, Bob Ellis looks back with jaundiced nostalgia at 2 stages in his life, in the life of his alter ego, Kenneth Elkin. Back in 1956, when Elkin was a reluctant participant at a Seventh-day Adventist summer camp in northern New South Wales, and with more interest in the daughter of a visiting preacher than in saving his soul. And back in 1962, the year with the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Elkin, now working on a Sydney University newspaper, meets and dallies with, among others, the daughter of a powerful newspaper editor. Bob Ellis has been trying to make this film for over 10 years, and the wait is well worth it. In Noah Taylor, he's found the perfect actor to play the young Ellis. And the team handsomely recreates a period where sexual relationships were very different from today. Elkin's story unfolds with great humor and a kind of melancholy that's a cross between Woody Allen and Francois Truffaut. Supporting performances are splendid too, especially Miranda Otto is the principal woman in Elkin's life. The Nostradamus Kid is an intelligent, almost wholly satisfying film from one of Australia's most distinctive and distinguished talents. Blending melancholy humor with hard-edged nostalgia, The Nostradamus Kid is an autobiographical film of distinction. It should do excellent art house business in Australia, where its writer-director Bob Ellis is known as an outspoken journalist and political commentator, and also find appreciative audiences in selected international markets. So this is a fictionalized vision of 2 formative years in the life of the filmmaker. In 1956, when he was a sex-starved teenager and unwilling disciple of Seventh-day Adventists. In 1962, when he got his first job and lost his virginity. Noah Taylor, familiar from the John Dugan films The Year My Voice Broke and Flirting, is perfectly cast as a character closely modeled on Bob Ellis in his youth. Character is single-mindedly determined to cut loose from his country bumpkin ultra-religious background. He is not a popular member of a 1956 Adventist New South Wales summer camp, which he ogles one of the pretty daughters of the visiting preacher and makes a nuisance of himself, asking heretical questions at prayer meetings. His pal Wayland is taken with the preacher's other daughter and eventually marries her. Residue of Elkin's religious upbringing is an inbuilt feeling that the end of the world may indeed be nigh. 6 years later, our main character has a low-paying job in a Sydney University newspaper and has evolved into a scruffy, often grubby character whose air of seedy depravity seems to attract women. He loses his virginity in a hilarious opening sequence with a drunken pickup. However, he soon becomes involved with the lovely virginal Jenny O'Brien, Miranda Otto, daughter of a prominent newspaper editor who, not surprisingly, strongly disapproves of his daughter's relationship. Matters come to a head when Elkin decides that Sydney is about to be destroyed in a nuclear attack triggered by the Cuban Missile Crisis and insists that Jenny accompany him across the mountains to safety. A coda has Elkin, now a successful playwright whose latest work is being performed at the Sydney Opera House, meeting by chance some childhood friends.
It must never happen again. No? No. No. I'm going. What's wrong with you? It's a free country, isn't it?
That's where he finally kisses the pastor's daughter.
I'll see you at Christmas. At the beach. Yeah. Tourists.
So eventually, this Miranda Otto's father gets the police out to arrest him. So I should probably read from my father's biography until the movie gets good again. Okay, second year. This is my father's biography of my father. He just passed away about 2 weeks ago. In 1952, Desmond was appointed to care for the pastoral needs of the Coffs Harbour district under the watchful eye of a fundamentalist minister who met him with the discouraging words, "They'll never ordain you, you're too heretical." Being located farther from Gwen, that's my mother, during the year, it did not diminish their love for each other. Gwen managed to visit Coffs Harbour only during her brief holidays. Their letters were prolific. At one point, they confessed to each other there was the typical Mars-Venus difference between them. Gwen admitted she was very affectionate. Desmond described himself as not outwardly demonstrative. But there was unmistakable warmth in their letters. Mid-year was the first time a kiss appeared at the end of the letter from Desmond. With wedding plans for the end of the year, Gwen enthused in September, "Well, dearest Des, many hugs and kisses. Be prepared for plenty after December to make up for your absence now." My father reciprocated, "The days are sweetened by the thought of the happiness our union will bring." Oh, I love this bit.
That's good. I like that.
W.H. Auden. Wise man for a professor. What do you do for a class?
I was brought up a cannibal. Now I work for the ABC. I'm a radio announcer in Fort Morris.
This reminds you of the good old days. Naked savages, tom-tomming around the fire.
No, not exactly. But it is good to remember those things too. As Henry Miller correctly said, the purpose of life is to remember.
Yeah, probably used to.
What is wrong?
Nightingales are sobbing in the orchards of our mothers. And the hearts that we broke long ago have long been breaking others. Tears are round, the seas are deep. Roll them overboard and sleep.
Yes, young troubles coming.
So now our protagonist finally goes to visit the shepherd's rod. So Australian Adventism, or Adventism in general, attracts a high degree of eccentrics who are obsessed with the time of the end. The Port Moresby radio announcer is this black guy from Papua New Guinea. That's the island above Australia, just north of Australia. Has an average IQ there of about 70. And so he says he used to be a cannibal, but now he works for the ABC. That's the publicly owned Australian Broadcasting Commission. And he's a radio announcer in Port Moresby. And he shows up periodically throughout the movie to chat with our protagonist at the bar. Now we've got our protagonist visiting the Shepherd's Rod to find out about the end of the world.
God gives us our true purpose, but we have to listen. We have to listen.
Ken. Ken. It is you, isn't it?
Oh, now he runs into Meryl at the strip club.
It's not my name anymore. My professional name's Cinnamon. Entertainer.
Entertainer.
They call me Sin for short. So, what's happened to you?
I'm a university student. Second year exams in 3 weeks. For the second time. It's pretty hayek.
There.
Are you stripping here?
Yeah.
Pretty hard yakka?
No? I'm the one after next. Want a perf?
Yeah?
Thought you might.
And then this Seventh-day Adventist rebel girl who was consorting with the bikers earlier in the movie, she's now become a stripper and a hawker.
Whether she wasn't better off back in church. Not that she couldn't dance, not that she wasn't happy in her own way. I think all of us are more or less equally happy whatever we do in life. There's a sort of flimsy line and we don't go above or below it most of the time.
I love the voiceover in this movie. It's Bob Ellis's own voice.
It was a historical inevitability in any way. I was drunk, randy, far from home.
Do you like your work?
No, but I hate having to, and this makes more money.
It's funny to see smoke.
Why shouldn't I?
Oh, no reason. Can you, buy smoke rings?
I'm learning. Nearly on the Jarman slide, aren't I? Down the Gadarene slope. Full of itching devils.
Well, both are. Poor little lambs have gone astray. Bah, bah, bah.
Nowhere to go home to now, is there?
You just remember?
She died. How's yours?
Okay. Go home for holidays. Brother Allison meets me on the church steps and says, "How's the battle doing, brother?"
How's it going?
Well, half time is a bit of a try, you know.
She didn't charge me for old times' sake, the old times we never had, and I now regret not having. But I had to leave early because her pimp was coming back. I never saw her again. Someone killed her a year later, choked her to death, in flagrante. Once more, I'd missed out on something that would have been good with someone I should have got to know better. McAllister used to call them witnesses, people who knew you when, who were irreplaceable, and you have to seek them out. I didn't seek her out. I had other fool things on my mind.
So Australian films are and movies and TV and novels are a little more depressing than their American counterpart. So there's kind of much more of a melancholy tone to these productions. Doesn't have the American optimism. So there are varying rules for strip clubs depending on the state that you're in Australia, how much they can show and how much they can do. So here the young protagonist has climbed up outside his beloved's window, and when she doesn't respond to him knocking on the window, he finds a comfortable spot and falls asleep outside her window all night. Then she wakes up in the morning. She's not very happy. Then he falls down off his ledge and runs away. The father calls the police. Young Alkin. God, he reminds me of myself. Very different from Desmond. My father would write to my mum, "The days are sweetened by the thought of the happiness our union will bring. To you, the dearest on earth, all my love and more than pen can say." Desmond sent Gwen, my mother, a pair of stockings for her birthday. Commenting on the leggy illustrations he quipped, "The box may be a bit vulgar, but I believe the contents are all right." So young Alkin gets arrested, and his Seventh-day Adventist mate comes to bail him out.
I came all the way down on a train from Armadale to pay your bail. I emphasise that.
Yeah, sorry.
McAllister rang me. He's as broke as you are, and I'm the only one that's not, so got on a train because I'm a good friend. In spite of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Well, explain yourself.
I fell asleep on a windowsill during a half-hearted attempt to climb in and rape the girl I love.
Oh. And, well, why did you feel the need to rape this maiden?
Well, I thought I could make her see sense. All right, I was wrong.
You'd been out drinking alcohol, had you, or were you eating underdone steak?
You're too right. Preceded by Westers Netral, a known sinful aphrodisiac. I became a beast.
Well, don't worry about you. You can get 5 years. And all this tripe you're writing to Honey Swire. Jesus Christ was a homosexual rooting John the Beloved. I mean, really, do you really believe all that?
Yeah. Why else was he the beloved? The disciple whom Jesus loved. What else does it mean?
You're really on the downhill slide.
Devil's got into me, you reckon?
I don't know. Come on, we've got to go see a lawyer.
He's really good, this bloke. You'll guess.
Okay.
Good stuff here.
Gently, that if you're under the impression, only the impression, that the young lady in question wanted to have sexual congress with you on that particular night, in that particular bedroom, and the gate, moreover, was open. Was the gate open, McKinnon?
I don't remember.
I'm not asking you to falsify your testimony in any way, but if the gate was open.
And the gate, moreover, was open. What in hell's going on?
Your worship?
The defendant will stop eating grapes and projecting the pips at prosecution counsel.
Your worship, may counsel approach the bench?
Certainly, Mr. Kevin.
Okay, so that's an excellent bit from his brief trial for trying to break in and rape the woman he loves to make her see sense. The gate was open, Your Honor. Okay, Sibley. So that's Sibley is the bloke earlier in the movie, the one positive Adventist preacher in the movie. So he also played a role in my dad's life. I believe his name was David Sibley. Seems like a David. Sibley could make the promise of a soul-charged pastorate for 1953 because he knew of Desmond's planned wedding at the end of 1952. It was the accepted norm that a pastor working with limited supervision should be married to bring certain checks and balances to his ministry.
That's all right. Still waiting on tables. Getting pretty tired. I had to repeat second year.
Do you see anything of Sarah or Esther?
Yeah, Sarah's still in Armadale. I still see her sometimes.
And Esther?
She went to Tasmania. She went a bit funny in the head. Now she's teaching kindergarten.
So Armadale's a college town in New South Wales. So this talk about to be a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, you have to be married to keep him in check. When my father's first wife died, the church put pressure on him to marry quickly because they don't want their Seventh-day Adventist pastors being unmarried and getting into all sorts of trouble. Okay, back talking to the cannibal.
Also look lonely.
I'm in revolt against authority.
Well, Many young men are, with good cause. Young men.
Ah, shoot. What did I do? Okay, come on.
Passionate. They must say their say.
Howard, you're a cannibal.
Oh, yes. A certain wisdom is granted me. It can be good sometimes to come into real life from an unusual angle. You see things more clearly.
I do know what you mean.
What do you see more clearly?
Lots of things. Hypocrisy of women, the teaching of English literature at university level.
Oh, yes.
It's like the Seventh-day Adventists interpreting the Book of Ezekiel. What did the author Jehovah mean by this metaphor here? I don't know, Governor, beats me.
You sound bitter.
I'm bitter. It's 18 wasted years, knocking on people's doors from the age of 8, shyly mentioning the end of the world is nigh. Sorry, we're Catholics that saying close the door. On top of that, English literature is like playing the bagpipes. It's a sheer waste of time.
But it will stand you in good stead in your chosen career.
Yeah, mate. What do you see?
Futility of career.
What, you prefer to sit under a coconut tree, do you? Stoked on carver, picking your teeth with somebody else's finger?
I do now.
You must be mad. Career is everything. Achievement is everything. Man is a challenge-seeking animal, isn't he?
I don't deny that. I only remark on its futility.
Futility.
What are you going to be when you grow up?
The greatest man who ever lived.
And ever died.
What do you mean?
Death makes it all pointless, don't you see?
Just a tropical layabout, that's all. We'll send up a couple of missionaries. They'll soon sort you out.
Oh, yes. Seventh-day Adventists. I remember them. Very tasty.
Very tasty. Yeah, the cannibal remembers the Seventh-day Adventist missionaries. It's very tasty.
Malcolm, we're getting a divorce. Why? It's time you grew up. I'm damn sure you won't. Years of revolting intimacy, brain-numbing torsions of needless belief. Decided to be on hope.
Don't be like that. Fight for me, McAllister.
All over uni, rational people were asking me if you also rapist as a child. And upon reflection, you probably were.
Well, just that one night.
Apart from which, I've been offered a room rent-free by a rich patroness of the arts who thinks I'm a poet. All right?
Jeez. Sure pulled the wool out of her ass.
See ya.
My world seemed to be falling apart. My best mate at school and my best mate at church didn't like me anymore. I was prevented by court order from raping the girl I loved and reduced to having philosophical conversations in a strip joint with a cannibal. I got myself a room, and with some money Mum got from selling her old car, I put a down payment on a television set, which in turn became the author of my doom, and a tape recorder on which I practiced my Laurence Olivier imitation.
Now, it's the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York.
All ships of any kind bound for Cuba, from whatever nation or port.
I spent long nights on the lounge room floor chewing methadone, which we all did in those days while studying for exams, and grinding my teeth, which was the byproduct of the same drug, later known as speed.
Move forward and stand tall. And move sideways and stand tall.
I love these flashbacks and with the voiceover by Bob Alice. Great stuff, mate. Okay, just before he died, here's an interview with Bob Ellis, the director and writer of this movie. Headline, writer Bob Ellis on being there. I not only caused the Howard era, I caused Abbott. So the Howard era is the former Australian Prime Minister, Bob Howard, and Abbott was Tony Abbott.
And furthermore, in Ezekiel 35:8, you see,
And I will fill his mountains with his slain men, and in thy hills and in thy valleys, and in all thy rivers shall they fall.
and thus we received the word on the first day of the 9th month.
Cripes, that's right.
So that means
I can't.
the Seventh-day Adventist will be wiped out on September the 1st.
in the mountain where they dwell, the campground. It shall be a valley of dry bones.
That's next Saturday.
So time is short. You must make a commitment now, before the Lord cometh like a thief in the night with power and great glory. And watch the destruction from across the road.
Look, I'll come back in the morning, all right?
This is a flashback to 1956, Seventh-day Adventist camp. He visits a heretical pastor, the shepherd's rod, predicting the end of the world.
I'm writing to you of my feelings for you for the last time on this earth. I want to say so much about what you mean to me and what unending happiness these last few days have.
He's trying to figure out how to spend his last day on earth.
No, we're out of hot chicken. Box turkey? No, I'm sorry.
The world looked just the same. I couldn't believe it was coming to an end. Maybe it wasn't, but it all added up.
All right, young man, come in quickly. This is your last chance in the world.
No. Sorry.
Grateful hound. You've heard longer than all the others.
In the end, I just couldn't run out on my own people. One arm, a fish mop, and a magpie on his roof, however spot on he might have been, which I truly suspected he was.
Morning, young lady.
Morning, Pastor Dibley.
Tell me, did you ever go to church school?
No, I didn't.
Quite right, too. I advised your mother not to send you there, on the ground that it would rot your mind.
Yeah, I know. Thanks.
I never went. But look at me. President of the Australasian Communion. I think you have a good mind too, young Elkin, and God has a purpose for it. He'll let you know what it is.
Pastor Dibley,
Yes, man.
did you really stay on that horse for 5 days?
That was just for dramatic effect. It was only about an hour, only.
The week moved inexorably towards Saturday. I felt very alone. I kept a straight face through my remaining days on this troubled planet and tried to enjoy myself. But the old pleasures didn't seem the same.
Thou, Lord, who knowest all things, because thou wert a man thyself, and didst suffer even as we do suffer. Yea, even the toothache, probably, Lord. Look down upon us with thy mercy. What? 18 and 6 to get sovereign? That don't sound much like sense. I tell you what, you best keep out with.
So yeah, the Pastor Dibley in this movie is based on the David Sibley, who was in charge of the Seventh-day Adventist division where my father became a pastor.
Get away. Lucky you saw the light.
Have you read where Sister White says it's a sin to tell a joke with no moral purpose, just to raise a laugh?
Yeah, I have, you old bitch.
Mustn't say that.
There's lots of things you mustn't do, aren't there?
That's right.
Will you sit with me Saturday?
Yeah.
So Ellen White is the founding prophet of the Adventist Church. She had all these visions after she got hit on the head with a rock when she was a teenager. She'd have visions after the church elders had decided on some new policy. Then she'd have a vision where it was confirmed by God's will. Church elders would decide, then Ellen White would very conveniently have a vision. So Seventh-day Adventist Church remains kind of feminine and nurturing to this day. It's about 70% of the church is female. This is Pastor Dibley, based on the real David Sibley.
Out of your seats! The day is nigh. Oh, brother, oh, sister, yes, the day is nigh when out of the clear blue sky and on a cloud no bigger than a man's hand.
It started.
Oh, what started?
It started at the top. The president of the Australasian Communion.
Stand back, stand back. Strange. I thought I was in Golgong. Praise the Lord, he is risen. Praise the Lord, let the earth hear.
Oh man, all these songs from my childhood coming back. This development of my father getting married was made easier when his mother tired of caravanning and his privations. Previously, Desmond had explained to Gwen, my mother, that marriage would mean she would have to tolerate the presence and financial burden of his mother in their home.
All of us dead like flies. It's in Ezekiel.
Not too late to join up, is it?
Oh, yeah, it's too late. It started. Well, it's our last night on Earth. How do you reckon we ought to spend it?
Let's rape all the women.
What?
Let's rape all the women.
All of them? What do you mean? I'll hold them down.
Well, we might rape 2 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Got this chloroform, right? From the first 18. Let's put it over their faces.
Oops. You're keen, aren't you?
Yeah. Hang on. Blimey. Good, isn't it? Well, visuals. Hang on.
We got a chloroform all 4 of them.
It's not very godly that they want to spend their last night on Earth raping all the women. I disavow. Disavow. Gwen, that's my mother.
Rage against the dying of the light was to change the lavatory signs around and write up some rude graffiti and go quite early to bed. I tried to write up my diary for, posterity, what it was like to be one who knew the end had come, but I soon dozed off and Mum turned off the light. No one died the next day, or the next. They took up the collection. That night I sat with Esther at the pictures.
Be a 7-day boy. Be a good 7-day boy. Out of long soul bugger up. Be a 7-day boy.
They're watching missionary movies of Papua New Guineans who've converted to Adventism as he tries to make the moves on the pastor's daughter.
Before God's light came into his life, he had to choose which one to send away. He said it made him sad, but God's will must be done. This is his second one. Her name is Mumdugamo. He knows my choice.
Don't. Excuse me.
But he was a little aggressive with his moves. It reminds me of 8th grade. My friend finally got a girlfriend, and he went to the movies, meaning the Seventh-day Adventist approved movies, at Pacific Union College, and she let him put his arm around her. But then the second time they go to a movie, he tries it again, and she's like, oh, he's trying to shrug him off.
Christian, don't think I should sit with you again.
Well, next year maybe.
No, not ever.
All right, dear.
No,
Can't stop me.
no, I can't.
Oh, they're old sport.
Okay, back to the biography about my father. Gwen, that's my mother, was graciously resigned to the fact of Lillian making up a threesome. Lillian's my dad's mum. But by now, Lillian had had enough of New South Wales towns, especially the wintry conditions. Northern Queensland lured her back home. She would in the future only visit once a year to maintain her maternal rights, as Desmond Riley stated later. So this is 1952. My father's just married to my mother. So my father at this age is 23. So I came along May 28, 66, so 14 years later. Throughout 1952, the letters between Gwen and Desmond reflected an increasing frenzy about wedding plans. Both were stretched in their duties with their minds on numerous urgencies. There was indecision about the caterer for the reception. Color of the suits Desmond and his best man should wear was debated. They were uncertain about finding time to buy Gwen's wedding ring. They mulled over the choice of a minister to perform the service.
Back to me. And the next year at camp, she sat with Alan Rawlins in the pictures, a good, clean Christian boy whose dad was also a minister. And the next year, she didn't come because she was in the loony bin for a while. I watched her walk away and knew how much I had lost by taking her hand. Being a Seventh-day Adventist was hard, but it was kind of fair. They quickly sorted out the ones they couldn't trust, like Merrill and me, branded us with the mark of Cain, and sent us wandering, fugitive sinners to the land of Nod for all our days. At dawn next day...
That's beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Shepherd's rod goes off and blows his brains out when his prophecy doesn't come true. There was a misunderstanding over whether they should have one bridesmaid or two, talking about my parents' wedding plans. Some things were certain. Based on Ellen White's writings, they determined there would be no ostentation at their wedding.
And on a rocky headland he used to prey on when he was a troubled kid like me. He blew his head off. He was a true believer, you see. He truly believed. The next day the camp packed up and we all went home. That afternoon I went to see Dib in Lismore Base Hospital, doing his deathbed scene, though he lived for 20 more years. Dib never missed an opportunity to be memorable.
All my life I've sought in vain an adequate definition of love. And I found it yesterday in a Reader's Digest the nurse brought to me. What could have been the last hour of my life. It's this. Fullness of response. Like that?
Yes, it's good.
It's not only good, it is sufficient. Ah, young Elkin, though we speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not that fullness of response, we're not worth too long. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Good.
You're a good man, Pastor Dibley.
Thank you, my boy.
Yep, based on my dad's old mate, David Sibley, his former boss. Okay, based on Ellen White's writings, my parents determined there'd be no ostentation at their wedding. Large sum of money was not going to be spent. Ellen White forbade wedding rings. This was usually ignored by Australians. But Desmond and Gwen therefore followed the Australian custom. The bridegroom placed a ring on the bride's hand during the wedding service. Gwen planned meticulously for the grand day. Early in November, Desmond himself was finally able to get to Currumbong in Sydney to make final preparations. Space of a day or two, the date and venue were settled, invitation cards printed and posted, the wedding ring purchased, and Doug Martin, a personal friend, chosen to sing during the service. That's my parents' wedding. So Desmond and Gwen, my parents, were wed on Wednesday, December 17, 1952, in the Avondale College Chapel, place of hallowed sentiment for many college students. And back to this interview with Bob Ellis, the writer-director of this movie, The Nostradamus Kid. Bob Ellis has always polarized people and confounded them too. Now severely ill, he reflects on his life and work and flirts with trouble all over again. Bob Ellis is archiving. Stricken with cancer, the 73-year-old blogger, playwright, scriptwriter, speechwriter, novelist, book and film reviewer, libel writ magnate, serial book pulper, political candidate, labor stalwart, and all-round troublemaker is trying in the winter of his being to impose order on a notoriously disorderly life. I tumble down into an absolute oblivion, but only for about an hour, he says, about mood swings generated by illness. But he is soldiering on as a sort of psycho-diarist of modern Australia, someone who brings out the emotional warts, secret shame, and weird beauty in all of us with his Rabelaisian ramblings. Dressed in black tracksuit, trackies, we call them in Australia, trackies. Seated on the desk of his brown timber home at the bluff end of Barrenjoey Road, Palm Beach, about 40 kilometers north of central Sydney, the pale Ellis reflects on illness and death and the current state of Australia. In first edition of Bob Ellis's book on politics, Goodbye Jerusalem was pulped following a successful defamation case brought by Tony Abbott, then treasurer of the Liberal Party Peter Costello, and their wives. At issue was a single sentence in which Ellis quoted politician Rodney Cavalier as having said, Abbott and Costello, they're both in the right wing of the Labour Party, till the one woman effed them, both of them, and married one of them, and inducted them into the Young Liberals. Because of the sentence yet to pulp the book. Isn't that a great sentence? So Tony Abbott and Peter Costello, they're both in the right wing of the Labour Party till the one woman effed both of them, married one of them, and inducted them into the Young Liberals. The publisher Random House accepted the disputed content was a falsehood and the book was removed from sale. The politicians and their wives were awarded $277,000 in damages. 13 years after the Goodbye Jerusalem fiasco, Ellis's book, Suddenly Last Winter, an Election Diary, published in 2011, created waves of the rusted on Labour supporters' criticisms of the then Labour Prime Minister Julia Gillard. So, Bob Ellis was born in 1942 in Murraywoolumba, grew up in Lismore, northern New South Wales seaboard city with a current population of about 30,000. His father was a traveling salesman and his mother was a strict Seventh-day Adventist. When Ellis was just 10, his 22-year-old sister Margaret was fatally struck down by a car while she was crossing a road. The tragedy has haunted him ever since. Bob Ellis was a student at Sydney University along with Clive James and Germaine Greer. His most iconic film script was Newsfront, set in mid-1950s Australia and largely about rival newsreel companies. Newsfront effectively launched the celluloid careers of Brian Brown, Bill Hunter, Wendy Hughes, and Chris Hayward. The script was very much Ellis, with its original account of the struggles for a national identity expressed through the popular media and the prism of an Australia consumed with the Cold War and growing American influence. Whoops.
I rang up Jenny and asked if she'd marry me. She said she'd think about it. I never heard from her again. I saw her across the room at the exams, but then she got away. And the next thing I heard, she was on a world trip with her mother.
Those that look out the windows see a dark end.
Sometimes I can fucking see. Wait. You will see.
Wasted and wounded, I waited out the next 15 years, but the disease got worse. I fell in love 8 times. I went to war. I got fired from 4 newspapers on points of principle. fought with collaborators and producers, addressed political rallies, lost friends, lost hope, regained it, never attempted suicide, never fulfilled the potential that Dibley, finally dying, said I had. Became that kind of weekly columnist you love to hate. Chased women, grew older, neglected my teeth, turned 40. It happened fairly quickly, all of it, and there I was. 2 weeks after my birthday, I was eating at the Opera House.
And he sees his old mate, Wayland, pouring red wine along with Sarai. This is a big sin, Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's 1984, Sydney Opera House.
Oh, hi. Sarah?
Last scene in the movie.
Happy birthday. You too. May I sit down? Oh, yeah, of course.
Esther's still in Ceylon, in the liver colony. She's lost weight since then.
Yeah, a couple of fingers, her nose.
I'd say that. It's bad luck.
So, how's your wife and kids?
Great, great.
You, prefer to eat without them?
Well, I write a lot in cafes. There's a play of mine on here.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
Can I buy you a drink?
Yes, you can.
So, what happened?
Well, you know how Mrs. White is supposed to be inspired by God?
Yeah.
Well, it turned out half of what she wrote was copied off other people, other writers.
Oh, right.
That much couldn't have been inspired, could it? And she said it was. Lying old bitch. So the whole church is falling apart. We left 2 months ago. We're trying to catch up on wine and things like that. We'd appreciate your advice.
Anytime.
Cheers.
Well, it's a long way from Ganella Bar campground.
Yeah.
Everyone else believes in the end of the world now. Atomic war, Nostradamus, terminal pollution, McAllister ingenerating bean shoots, and building a fallout shelter in their own backyard.
Well, everyone needs a hobby.
We won, didn't we? Convinced them all. The end of the world is no.
Maybe it is.
No way.
You reckon?
No. Apocalypse never.
I don't like the sound of that.
So then he goes to the Sydney Opera House to see a performance of his play. General Booth Enters Heaven. So General Booth was one of the key founders, I think, of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And when he's at the theater, he sees Jenny O'Brien, the Sheila that he wanted to marry, the main female character in the movie. And she's there with his old mate from Sydney University, McAllister. They're all married now, and they're kind of bored by his theatrical performance. Bob Ellis fell out with a lot of people, says a friend. He wasn't generously spirited, always a bit curmudgeonly. And former New York premier says he wasn't very careful with his facts. He never missed the train to check a fact. So that got into a lot of trouble. Okay, this is the end of the movie right here.
I looked out and across at the lights of the civilization I still wasn't a part of. I thought about everything. It didn't help.
I looked out on a civilization that I still wasn't a part of. That's the end of the movie. Haunting end to this movie on growing up as a Seventh-day Adventist in Australia, the Nostradamus Kid from 1992. It's available on YouTube. I strongly recommend it. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.